the volume.
Turn up the volume.
You've arrived at the destination for all things Kentucky. This is the Bleed Blue Network Podcast.
What's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome back to the Bleed Blue Network Podcast. This is going to be a fun episode. I think we have the most famous punter, and some would say, is the Pat McAfee of Kentucky, potentially. Max Duffy, what's up, man?
I prefer not to be referred to as that. Anything besides that is fine. But no, appreciate it. Appreciate you guys for having me.
Yeah. Kyndall, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, Max, obviously you played on a lot of really fun Kentucky teams, so we're going to talk some football, but you're a little tired this morning. And so you were watching Australian rules football, and I don't think a lot of people maybe know about that. So it'd be cool maybe if you talked a little bit about Australian rules football and kind of that background.
Yeah, I stayed up last night watching some of my friends. They're playing in the professional league back home. Which
is big, right? Like we're talking about 50, 60, 70,000 seat stadiums,
100,000.
Right? Oh, well.
Oh my God.
We're talking about the biggest sport in Australia. So as you know, Australia, dominant sporting country, just dominated the Olympics per capita. So we're pretty happy with how
breakdancing was amazing.
The breakdancing, we'll look past that. We'll pretend that didn't happen. But everything else, we dominated. But yeah, really good sport. I got drafted into professional league back home out of high school. I played for 3 years, and before I got cut and came over here. And yeah, it's the biggest sport in Australia. Stayed up last night watching my buddies play, and unfortunately they lost. But yeah, it's a big deal back home, and I wish they played it a little bit more here or around the world. I know there's a couple of leagues, like Cincinnati has the Cincinnati Dockers, and then there's a Nashville Kangaroos, I think, and a bunch of other teams. I've thought every now and then maybe I should just go and join in.
You should.
But I don't know if you play professionally, if you're actually allowed to play in those leagues, it'd be cheating a little bit. So I don't know.
I mean, you know, I've played some pickup games and some rec league soccer and stuff with some guys who played pro, and it is cheating. It's not
exactly. It's like my buddy played professional basketball back home, and he just sent me a video of him dominating in Vietnam. Now, everyone in Vietnam's like 5 foot tall, and he's 6'9", and he's like, dude, I'm dominating this league. I'm like,
you're playing with a bunch of hobbits. What are you talking about?
Literally. So I don't know if I should go down or not.
Do you think that Australian rules football is a better translation to an American fan than, say, rugby?
100%. People will love it. So all my housemates that I've lived with, everyone that I've shown it to really likes it. Like, it's the combination of every sport you could think of. You got to dribble the ball every so often. You got to be able to punt. You got to be able to hand pass, which is not throw. You got to be able to tackle, no helmets, no pads, all that kind of stuff. So to me, it's the best sport in the world. No offense to American football. It's a bit more free flowing. It's like soccer. You move up and down the field and kick plenty of goals.
Big.
Field's 200 odd yards. You cover about 10 miles a game. So to me, it's the ultimate sport. I love it. I still watch it every weekend. So yeah.
ESPN actually has a lot of those games on, I think.
So when ESPN first started, it used to be on all the time. So everyone that's like 60 and older will come up to me and be like, I used to watch your sport. It's like, so when it's like ESPN had like that and like all these random weird sports on when it first started.
Yeah.
So lots of old people over here know what it is. And then during COVID, I think it was the only sport really in the world going. And it went for like 2 weeks before they canceled it as well. So people started watching it because everyone wanted to gamble and like
just
bet
wanted
on
to watch something.
Yeah, exactly.
God.
So it was on for about 2 weeks. So then had everyone in like America messaging me like, what's this sport? What's the rules? All that kind of stuff. So that was pretty cool. It got its limelight for a little bit. Pat McAfee actually decided he had a team, and he actually boosted it a lot, which was awesome. Which was nice. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Hopefully they'll come over here and play some games at some stage.
That would actually be really fun. I've watched it, and we were talking offline. I've had a lot of friends from Australia over the years from college, and then from the Bourbon side, which is and they were always big fans also of Australian rules football. So I've Watched it off and on. The times are a little weird
Absolutely.
when you have to watch it sometimes. But as a dad of 3, sometimes you're up in the middle of the night, and it's something that you can turn on and watch. And it is really fun. It is a really fun sport.
It's a great sport. But yeah, like you said, you got to stay up. So that's why I'm a little tired this morning. I probably stayed up to about 2 or 3 in the morning watching it last night. So.
Oh, that's nothing, man. I was up that late with a screaming baby. So we're good. We're
same thing, I guess.
Still the same.
Yeah.
You were screaming. I was dealing with the screaming.
Correct.
Right there. That's there. But yeah, man, that's really cool. There's probably some other Australia stuff we'll talk about that'll be funny at the end, but we'll get into everything. Obviously, you're back in Lexington now. You spent a couple really fun years here. What was for you the biggest transition? Actually, first, what for you was it like when someone started talking about Kentucky football being in Australia? Is college football a big sport? Did you kind of have to learn a lot before you were like, yeah, I'd be interested in doing this?
Kind of. I mean, no one knows anything, no offense, about university. Probably basketball, honestly. Like, if you're a big basketball fan, like, I only put 2 and 2 together probably when I came over here, and I was like, oh, Anthony Davis, John Wall, like Booker. I was they went here. That's pretty cool. But honestly, before I got over here, I didn't really put that together. I just kind of thought that's something that they play before they make the big leagues, and who really cares about it? The best example would be like my dad. When I told him I wanted to, I'll start with my mum. I said to my mum, hey, I got cut from the professional league back home. I'm going to try and find something else to do. My buddy had told me that his friend punted at Ole Miss, and I was like, oh, the Blindside movie. I was like, absolutely, like, I'll go do that.
Sandra Bullock's still there.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that sounded pretty cool. So I said to my mum, hey, I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know what I'm going to, like, what school I'll end up at or where, or even I'll even get a school, but I'm going to go over to America and punt. And Mum said, Max, you don't need to be doing that. And so in Australia, punting means gambling. So Mum thought I was coming over to be a professional gambler, which actually sounds way more cool than actually punting a football. So I don't know why she said no. That's actually pretty cool. But she was like,
Vegas is not near Lexington, Mom. They call it Lex Vegas sometimes.
Literally, Mum was like, Max, you can just gamble from here if you really need to. I was like, no. So that was her perspective. Dad said to me, what would you want to go over and play for your university for? Like, that sounds terrible. And I was like, I think it's a little bit bigger than what we give it credit for, Dad. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, maybe. And he's like, well, what does a punter do? I'm like, well, not a lot. And then he's like, well, that sounds boring. So anyway, he was kind of completely against it at the start. And then they flew me and Dad over for our official visit, obviously skipping a bunch of steps, but they flew us over for the official visit, which was crazy because it's 35 hours of travel with 2 days in Lexington and then 35 hours back to Australia, which I don't know why we did it, but I was really happy we did because Dad got to see all the facilities. He got to meet the coaches.
Did you see a game too, or was it just a visit?
Just a visit. It was in like December, so it was freezing cold. I was like, wow, this is going to be a change. It was freezing cold.
But no spider season here.
Yeah. They took, obviously like they do, they host you really well. I think Dad went out and annoyed the coaches till about 3 a.m. every morning. I know he had a hell of a time. And we flew back and Dad was like, that seemed pretty good. Like, to me, that seemed cool. Like, he's like, I still don't understand why anyone watches that, but that seems pretty cool. Then when he flew back for my first game, he came to Kyle Field. We played Texas A&M. I think they had about 110,000 that day. Mm-hmm. And then Dad afterwards was like, I can see why you want to do this. Like, this is cool. He's like, well, thankfully, he saw me have like 10 punts that game. So he thinks I do a lot more than what I did. He's like, this is normal.
That was a great game for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So he actually get to see me out there. Thank God he didn't come to any Louisville games because he wouldn't have seen me.
Did you ever punt versus Louisville?
One time, I think. Yeah, one time in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So almost.
We're clipping that.
I wish I didn't because it would be such a cool stat to have played for 3 years and never punted against Louisville.
Right.
I think that would be
Wasn't
awesome.
it in garbage time, though?
It was. It was way down the end. Honestly, it might have been 2, but I'm pretty sure it was 1 because I know I definitely didn't punt the first year. like wasn't even close. We
Well,
scored
that was the 60,
Right.
60, right? Was it 56 to 10 or
Something like
It was
that.
at Louisville?
Yeah.
Where though wasn't it Will went for like 4?
No, so this was
that
this was Terry Wilson. They had Cunningham.
Well, that was 63 to 10 or something, right? That
at
Like
was,
something
Louisville.
stupid.
that was we've blown them out a lot.
Yeah, I think every time it got to fourth down and we were about to run out there, they would give some stupid penalty. So they weren't interested in playing that night. But yeah, he got to come and see me play there, and that was really cool because it was like, I think it meant a lot to me that I came over here and did something that, if you're going to give up seeing your family and your friends and all that for a long time, and like there was a period during COVID where I didn't see him for 4 years, it's like I want to make this worthwhile. I want to make sure that if I come over here, I'm doing something that's productive and something that is hard to achieve. And I think my dad saw that when he came over, so that was really cool. And cool to have him there. I think he enjoyed plenty of beers at Kyle Field too, which was pretty awesome. And he got to meet some Texans, which he thought was pretty unique. He always calls everyone John Wayne over here, so that was cool.
So is it like common at all for anybody to come over here to play either professional sports or college or things like that, or were you like an anomaly?
At the time, it was a little bit less. Like right now, I think let's say there's 119 Division 1 punters. There's probably 80 are Australian now.
Okay.
He started a trend.
Yeah,
But
he did.
I think I was the first one. Me and the guy that punted at Auburn were the first two basically guys that had played professional football back home to ever come over and punt. And I think our game was before his in week 1, so I got the first punt. So I claim that like I was the first professional guy to come over here and play in this league. So there was 2 of us in the SEC. I think now the 16 teams, there's probably 13. So, I mean, that definitely helped. Like, I'm not saying I was a complete star, but that helped promote SEC,
Right.
like teams bring Australians over.
Pretty good.
Because the SEC was pretty patriotic before that. They didn't really want anyone infiltrating.
Absolutely.
So, it's definitely become bigger and bigger. I know the first year that they started this program back home, the guys were great, like really, really good punters, but they ended up at like, and no offense to these schools, but the smaller school, like Eastern Kentucky, I believe it was like Portland State and Hawaii. Now the guy that got Hawaii struck gold. The other two, ended up in Richmond, Kentucky, and obviously Portland. So
I lived in Richmond, Kentucky for a while, so I get it.
Yeah. So started off small and then it's just grown and grown from there.
Right. What was the biggest like transition coming from home to here?
Probably not language barrier in terms of obviously both of us speak English, but slang for
slang,
sure.
yeah.
And just getting like, you don't know how old it gets fast of like, oh, you say it this way, or, oh, you sound like this, and like everyone trying to do an Australian accent, everyone like laughing at everything you say, like. That Shane Gillis clip at the moment, I've been sent it a million times of him making fun of Australians. Like he tells a joke about 9/11 and how it would be funny if Australian was in the building. And everyone sends that to me, which it is kind of funny. But like everyone just thinks how we talk is hilarious. And everyone always wants to do that. Everyone will be like, have you ever seen a kangaroo? Have you ever done this? Like it's like, I mean, yeah, our country's different. I get it. Like it's be like me saying, "Have you ever been to McDonald's?" Yeah, you guys have been to McDonald's. Like
it's actually fun because Australia and America, and you might think I'm crazy, but when I with my Australian friends, kind of like in the extreme spectrums of some of the things we have and you have is really kind of funny because it's not the same.
Yeah.
But it's where you can go, oh yeah, well we have this, and you're like, well we do this. And it's all, it's kind of funny. Like
it's crazy how we can live on literally the complete opposite side of the world and we can understand each other. We have very similar thoughts about lots of things.
Very.
Both countries love sport. Both countries, go to university. Like just all the similarities are crazy. Obviously, both started by
you just
British
have a
people.
lot more shit that tries to kill you.
Correct.
Over there.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, and a lot more people that try to as well because we're a penal colony, so we're all convicts. So I always say we're a little bit tougher than you guys because we got all the strong, mean guys. So
well, the interesting thing about like Australia that some people don't think about is how all wild actually like some of it is and open in space, and especially in like the northern countries with the crocs and cattle farming and I mean, and people think kangaroos and even koalas are these big fuzzy cuddly animals, and they're not.
No. Well, koalas sleep for 23 hours a day and they're constantly high, so they have a pretty good life. But no, one interesting stat is Perth, where I'm from, is the most isolated city in the world. So, I mean, you're talking about a place that you grow up and the nearest city to fly to is 3-hour flight. So we are way away from everything. Like you said, everyone lives on the coast
vast.
and no one lives in the middle of the country. It's just desert and dry and hot. So thankfully I've been up north, like you're talking about. My sister runs like the media and marketing for that area and all the tourism. So I've gone up and done all the crocs and the gorges and the helicopter flights and all that. So it's pretty cool.
It's beautiful.
It's amazing.
It's somewhere between like the Grand Canyon meets like a forest.
Yeah, with crocodiles.
With crocodiles. With crocodiles.
Massive crocodiles.
Which are not small. Like even the American crocodiles we have, those are little bitches compared to what they have over there.
Absolutely.
Like, I would even say way worse than the African crocodiles.
Yeah, they're big. And now there's no, we don't have to try and cross the river like you see in those documentaries. They just cross our fingers and hope. But yeah.
But it is crazy how these massive animals will end up in like a little watering hole where kids play next to it or fish, and you would never see a 20-foot animal in that.
Yeah, when I went up there, there's the freshwater crocodiles or alligators. I don't know what they actually refer them to. And then there's obviously the saltwater crocs. Now, if there's a saltwater croc, you ain't hopping in the water. But if there's a freshwater alligator, these things are massive. Like the size of this table, maybe bigger. I know people listening can't see what the size of this table is.
It's about an 8-foot table.
Yeah.
Right, maybe a little bit bigger. And you can go swim. Like they won't annoy you too much. But it's just nerve-wracking when you first do it because you're like, man, that thing looks like it could swallow me, but it's not going to attack me. So when I went up there, I was very nervous to get in the water.
It's kind of like, so I grew up in Florida, and there's a misconception there about alligators. And there's alligators everywhere. Alligators don't really mess with people a ton. I mean, it's usually wrong place, wrong time, big alligator, a kid, hungry, right? Like there's not a lot of incidents where like alligators just randomly attack people. Right. I've been fishing and I've looked down and there's just like a 10-foot gator just swim underneath, like in the canal, and you just.
But would you get in the water? Like,
I mean, I'm not
going
to jump on top of it, but I've been in lakes where they've been there. I'm not going to run up to them and kick them, in the tail or anything. But they usually leave. You know this. They do. Yeah. They leave you alone. You're big. You are almost half their size, and they don't have the testosterone levels that crocs do. Crocs see something and are just like, oh, I'll put it in my mouth. I'm going to eat you.
Yeah, they don't realize we don't have as sharp teeth as them. So
yeah, no,
interesting.
Yeah, just bigger guys.
I'm probably still not going to take a dip with them.
Yeah. You're just going to get with the sharks.
Neither. No.
Have you ever been white shark diving, cage diving?
No, I've always wanted to.
Same.
That would be really, really cool. Obviously a lot of great whites. I know this is going to turn into, there's so many things that can eat you in Australia.
Dude, the great white shark is the 17th most deadly animal in Australia. It's a little bitch compared to everything else.
I mean, but if you hop in the water, it becomes number one. So, no, I mean, I've seen when I say I've seen one or two, I've been at beaches where we've had to get out of the water when they swim through. It's pretty scary going in the water, honestly, in Australia, particularly right now. There's so many great whites, and I've got a lot of friends that would go, diving for crays. You guys would call them lobsters. And
abalone too is another.
Right. All that kind of stuff. So when they've just stopped diving, they're like, there's so many great whites right now. Which is scary if you swim. My dad goes swimming at the beach all the time and is one of those people that will just swim for hours. And even he's started swimming in between the nets now because he's like, I ain't getting eaten. So it's definitely become a big problem. But water's too nice sometimes. It's too hot to not get in. So.
I'm a big animal person when it comes I've always had an infatuation with sharks, and it is interesting to see not just where you guys are, but here. The where they're starting to show up. I mean, they're finding 18-footers now up in Canada. Yeah. And
I was just down in Pensacola, living in Pensacola, Florida, and they're finding so many sharks.
So many.
Yeah.
It's almost like that being protected, and all of a sudden now I don't know if they've all hit a sense of maturity.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's crazy to see that.
It seems like they're going at it like rabbits in the water.
But it's real interesting. But also with the sea lion protection you're seeing, especially up north, they tracked one the other day because I finally been able to watch Shark Week. 6 weeks later. Because, it's what happens when your kid's in the NICU, right? From Canada to Florida and back. And I'm like, first of all, that sounds like a normal Canadian. But I mean, it's interesting to see that. We can talk about this all day. We'll get back to some football talk. What's been kind of your impression of the team? This year's team. Obviously, you haven't seen a ton of them, but you know, watching them play from last year, some of the transfers that have come in, a lot of hype. Are you on the hype train, or are you still kind of having a little bit of optimism?
I'm going to give the most boring answer of all time, but obviously it's just going to depend how our quarterback is, and I think everyone's waiting to see how that goes in a game. I mean, we saw him play a little bit at Georgia, but it's going to depend how he commands the team, and that's the same for every football team. I mean, how good's your quarterback, and then you'll see how good you're going to be. Our defense is going to be phenomenal. Our offense, obviously, we got lots of weapons on the outside. Who knows how we'll run the ball? I guess we'll be okay. The box is going to be lighter, seeing as they got to protect our wide receivers a little bit more. But
we can sling. I mean,
exactly,
we got guys that can catch.
You're right. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, some of the things that I really like are, one, I love that Kentucky doesn't lose players to NIL, even though clearly other teams have more money. I think we do a phenomenal job of keeping talent and then bringing talent in.
Yeah.
Which doesn't get as much credit as it should, because you've seen mass exodus at LSU, Texas A&M. Like, some of these big schools that have all the money, they still lose people.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's also about the culture that you're able to build in between the four walls. And Soups has done an incredible job by hiring really good staff. I said on the radio the other day, like, another thing that gets discredited is all the players really like the staff. The staff is always like, you know, we lose a couple. Like, we lost Clinksdale to Michigan and now the Chargers. We lost Sumroll, obviously, to being the head coach. Like, we're losing some coaches because they're so good, but then our ability to retain coaches and not lose them too when there's been money thrown at them. Like, can't tell me Brad White hasn't had numerous offers. So to be able to keep guys like that is great. And then the last thing that I thought was really positive so far this year, that is, like, you normally can't get much out of interviews. Like, everyone's going to give just the normal coach speak or player speak answers. But to me, this year's big shift has been, like, when they ask questions, normally it's, oh, I'm the best player in the world. Like, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. It's been, this guy for us is really good. This other guy's great. This guy's holding down the D-line. It's been praise on everyone else except themselves, which is massive. Like, especially in NIL era where everyone wants their own money, everyone wants stuff for themselves. The guys praising other players, and I think obviously the group cohesion that they've been able to build is massive. Like, that makes such a difference. If guys are playing hard for each other rather than just themselves, it's going to, you know, show its face for one or two extra wins, I'm sure. And I know Coach Hood, who was my special teams coordinator, is now the player development officer or something.
Yeah.
He would have been a massive part in that, because I remember during my second year in Kentucky, he introduced Breaking Bread, which was just sitting down with players and pairing people up with people you'd never really talk to because you're in different position groups or whatever, and you've got to learn more about them. You know, what do they like? What don't they like? What do they like to eat? All that kind of stuff. And as simple as that sounds, you know, you gain a respect by knowing the person way more. And it just builds the cohesion on the team, and then the results flow from that.
For sure. I mean, I feel like we've seen that too, just talking with the players that we've interviewed, talk about how they've all kind of developed this or played with how they're building each other up. And, you know, this person is really a mentor to me, or I am, you know, going to be a senior or a junior. And they're talking about building those relationships with those new guys coming in.
And this is going to sound like I'm taking a shot at the last two quarterbacks. I'm not. It's just the personality that they had. It stems from your leader, which is going to be your quarterback.
Right.
This quarterback seems like he doesn't want to be too much about himself, and he's happy to praise others, and he's pretty laid back, casual, country kind of guy. The last two before that, maybe like the mirror a little bit too much sometimes.
Well, if you look like Will Levis, you'd like the mirror too, right?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. So, and they were great. Will was the ultimate competitor. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Good dude, all
He
that
was
kind
a
of
Joe
stuff.
Theismann type quarterback. He was flashy.
Yep.
Very flashy.
You have these different types, and I'm sure you've seen this now more so now, where like even like guys in the NFL, right? You've got these guys that are real flamboyant, or you've got these guys that are real reserved. It doesn't seem like there's really that middle ground too much. Unless you're a backup.
And trust me, it has a big impact on the team if your quarterback, to me, is like Brock is. Back when Terry was our quarterback, was he the greatest talented quarterback in the world?
I don't even think I even heard him talk.
Exactly.
Right.
Never heard him talk. But that meant, like, if everyone's looking at the quarterback and how they present themselves, then everyone goes, well, I don't need to be this loud, like, look at me kind of guy. And the O-line kind of took over those groups, obviously, with Shalaman. And we were able to have a well-rounded team that really just played for each other. And I think it's kind of back to that, which is going to be awesome to see how it goes.
I definitely think the excitement this year is really is one of the highest I think I've ever seen for Kentucky. And I don't know when you were back, but there were tents set up in June.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, they had to put signs out that says no tents until August, and nobody listened to it. I think as a player, as a former player, do you feel that energy like going into preseason? Is that something that you guys would pay attention to?
I think the players are just more focused on themselves, honestly. They probably don't know what's going on outside. I think June, July, August are the greatest times in the world for any football fan base because you're going 12-0, right? Like every single time in the preseason, you're like, we're so good. And then the season comes around and you end up being like Florida and you win 3 games. It's like, damn.
Shots. Shots. I love it.
But no, seriously, like it's a great time to be around a football program. The guys would be getting so excited. We're 2 weeks away now, or
2 weeks from today. 1 week from week 0, though.
Exactly. So
1 week from when Georgia Tech upsets Florida State.
So it's a great time to be around. I think the guys will be starting to get super excited. I've talked to a couple of them. They will be excited. But honestly, like I think, and I've realized this since I've been a part of the media landscape, the players don't listen. Like,
which is good.
There might be a couple, but like no one, like no offense to Matt, like no players tuning into KSR to see what he thinks. But the fan base is, of course, the fan base is, and it's not like they just don't like they're listening to something on Spotify or watching TikTok or what. Like they're not listening to radio shows.
They're listening to Pat McAfee,
right? Then they've got the wrong station, but
no, but like that's what they're not. They don't want to listen to themselves, and I wouldn't either.
No,
if I was a player, I just would be calling into places and yelling at people.
Right, exactly.
And they might see some tweets that get like I know the first thing that used to happen after games was everyone would turn their phone on and be like, "Oh, look at this tweet! Look at this tweet!" But honestly, most of the guys don't really care that much. They're just in their own bubble, ready to play.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine turning on after a game and, looking at all these tweets about yourself and you're like, I literally just did that an hour ago.
That depends on if you're a punter and you made someone just juke them out of their shit.
Okay, if you had a really good game, I could get behind that. But, I mean, if you're just mediocre coming out of there.
What was the funniest tweet when you made that North Carolina State guy basically fall out of his pants in the bowl game?
There was a lot. It was, honestly, the most annoying stuff was the Australians on Twitter chiming in and going, this happens every day. That's not even that good. I'm like,
you don't understand.
You come over here and put a helmet on and see how it goes.
You come over here and have somebody that big trying to take your head off
right.
and see how you feel.
Yeah, like, give me a break. Come on. So
they don't look as big as they do in person on TV.
No, they don't. Mm-hmm. And there's not as much on the line in Australian football if you get that blocked or tackled. Like, that's game-changing if he was to tackle me or block it. And he was talking a little bit of smack in the lead up to that week. He was I know him a little bit, and he was messaging me on Instagram saying that they were coming to block a punt and good luck, just because I knew someone that was playing at NC State at the time, and I was like, all right, come on then.
Whoop!
Whoop! Didn't really go right for them.
That's just one of the funniest things.
I've said this before, and it's fine to say it now. We'd had a few, like the specialists were kind of allowed to do what we wanted, although the coaches weren't always aware. We'd had a few drinks the night before that game. And honestly, like I think part of it that played into it was I was a little bit hungover and I was just a little bit tired and I just wasn't thinking as fast as I normally do. And so, because I had plenty of time to get the punt off before he came, I was kind of lazy. And I was like, oh man, I got to go out there and punt. And I went to punt and I was like, oh, he's coming for me. All right, I'll just go around him and then I'll kick it. Like, I was literally in one of those hungover mindsets of like, man, I just would rather be sleeping on the couch right now.
And it turned out to be a highlight reel.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
That's actually like one of the funniest things I've like. When you are in the game, and we asked Alex Rayner this when he was on the show. I don't think we put that show out yet. It's coming. How did you stay focused? I mean, obviously you've played professional sports and it's different when you were used to being on the field all the time. And how did you stay focused and ready for when your number was called to make sure, you didn't?
Yeah. I mean, I could talk to you about this for 2 hours. It could be a completely separate podcast, but I did a master's in sports psychology. I'm really, really interested in sports psych and psychology in general, but also like elite performance for psychology. And to me, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I could literally sit here for an hour and talk to you about it, but
the mental side,
100%. And it's massive. Like you see any punter in Division 1, even like FCS football, whatever, the difference of people's ability, like their best kick or their best punt, everyone's the same to me. Like there's a couple guys that might have a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever. But it's the guys that are able to go out there and produce time after time and just be consistent. Makes a massive difference. I think for me, I was lucky that I was never really emotionally invested in any of the games. I know that sounds bad to say, but I really didn't. Like, did I want us to win? Of course. If we lost, was it going to change my life? No. If we won, was it going to change my life? No. I didn't care. Like, it's just like, let's go out there. I had a lot of self-pride of do the best that I can do and make sure that I have prepared in a way that gives me every best chance to succeed. And that's what made me feel comfortable on Saturdays was I knew I'd done and ticked every single box I possibly could leading up to that game, and there's nothing more that I can do. So if it comes off the side of my foot like at Georgia and goes sideways into the stands, well, I did everything I could anyway. I came off the field laughing. And then, like, if it goes really, really good, then great. Like, cool. I did what I could. And some of the games I had my biggest punts, I also had my worst punts. Like, a lot of stuff comes down to chance and luck, and even with sport, like whether you make the NFL, don't make the NFL, whether you're a good player, bad player, sometimes it just comes down to a bit of good fortune. And all you got to do is give yourself, by preparing the best way, give yourself the best chance to succeed. And you can't control other things.
Let me look at Tom Brady. And Tom Brady was not a high draft. He was a 6th round draft pick, and now he's. But
at the same time, if Bledsoe doesn't get injured, he never ends up being a quarterback. Like, there's so many things that have to go your way. Like, I could have come over here and the first day, not to get morbid or anything, but I could have had been in a car crash or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that have to go your way. All you can do is control the aspects that you can.
The right place,
and,
right time.
And really prepare at an elite level. And I think that's what playing Australian football helped me do a little bit more than college guys was prepare at an elite level, like mentally, physically, everything that I did, I was like, this is the best athlete I could possibly be. And then after that, I mean, it's up to whoever's in charge.
You were also probably a little bit more mature than some of the guys that were.
Maybe.
Well, definitely a little bit more mature than the fresh out of the high school. I think.
Already playing professional sports. It's a different level of knowing that tomorrow the sun still rises, right? I mean,
but then also, I think as well, a more appreciation of, hey, this is cutthroat and you better prepare at an elite level because you don't want to go out and embarrass yourself. Like, I always say to the guys that I coach now, and I've done camps and clinics, and then I've coached at college level. It's the praise is nice, but the one thing that you prepare for and make sure that you're really, really good at what you do is so you don't get the hate, because that sucks. Like I've been around guys like Texas A&M, Miles Butler came up short. He's crying in the locker room. There's people messaging him on Instagram saying the most vile things of all time. Now, does he deserve it? Sure, he missed the kick. I don't feel bad for those people, and like Miles doesn't hold anything against anyone. When Chance missed the kick against Florida in 2019, when he should have made it, was 33-yard field goal, right? The amount of messages that he gets, the amount of, we're in a sorority house right now, the amount of sorority girls that posted like our chances were poor anyway because his name's Chance, like that stuff hurts. And like that's why though, if you'd done everything you could to that moment, you feel good about it. You're like, man, I prepared and I did everything I could. I just missed. But the guys that don't prepare, which I'm not saying it was those two, but it might have been, and they come up short, that's when it's like, man, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. And it's like, well, it's too late now. So
you don't ever want to like wake up the next day and this is life in general, right? And I've told people like, one day you're going to be 90. Don't look back on when you were something and say, I wish I would have.
Right.
And some of my friends tease me because I'm not in the best shape that I used to be anymore. But I'm only going to get this time with my kids when they're this little one time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I can go work out. Now, look, I mean, obviously stuff could happen, whatever. I can go work out when they're in school and stuff, right? I want to spend the maximum amount of time. I know trying to be healthy and everything but listen, kids are parents,
that's
this.
a workout.
You are the garbage can for all their food. But like that's the aspect, right? Don't regret.
Yeah, my head coach used to say like you can't quarantine effort, so you can't pick and choose what you want to try.
You can't coach effort either.
Right, you either want to try hard at everything you do and do it to the best of your ability. Now, will you be better at some things than others? Sure, but you can't just pick and choose. Like I can't try at football and not try at school, or I can't like try really hard in one aspect of my life and everything else I don't care about. Don't work like that. You either try and do the best of your ability in everything or you're not doing it at all.
You kind of touched on the NIL thing, and I think it's an interesting thing to get a perspective on from someone who came in right before a lot of that
really sucks.
happened. Sorry about that.
Yeah. We're about to get a payout.
Is that what's that kind of like from your perspective when you've seen it? And you touched on the relationships and everything. Mm-hmm. Has that hurt college football? Has it helped? Is it kind of TBD because it's a little bit of the Wild West? How do you see it from being in that world and now being on the media side?
I mean, it's great. I mean, the guys deserve every single cent that they get.
Yeah.
To me, it's probably going to help in the long run. I think in the short term, it's a little bit of like the unknown and guys are struggling to deal with it. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's great. It's like, all right, you basically become a professional earlier because there's way more pressure because now, hey, I'm not just playing and I get the scapegoat of, oh man, I'm just a college guy.
Right.
Like the days of like, they're just kids, leave them alone to me is no. If you want to take the money, then you got to perform.
Right.
So if you're getting $500,000, $1 million, 200,000, 100,000, 50,000, then you deserve every bit of praise, but you deserve every bit of feedback that you get too.
Correct.
And so for me, it's really good for the guys that are coming through college now of like, they've experienced now 3 years of it before they get to the NFL. And it just makes you grow up faster and more accountability for your performance. And I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
I agree with that. So we've talked a lot already and this is going, so we'll start to wrap up a little bit. Give us your prediction for the season. Where do you think Kentucky lands record-wise?
I want to say that Brock's good. Like, I want to really hope that he is. And I think, like, if you're a 5-star at Georgia, then you've got to, at some level, be able to play. Yeah. I think the coaches will bring the best out of him. I think getting Wolford back is going to be big for the O-line.
Gavin behind him, I think, will bring that out because he started. I mean, people want to frown on Rutgers, but that's a Power 5 school in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think our defense obviously is going to be really good. I mean, that's the easy thing to say, but they are going to be good.
Right.
So, I could see us go 9-3. I don't see why that can't happen. I think you get a bit of luck down the back end of your season, and some teams end up hurt and we're healthy.
Texas is already getting it. They've lost 2 big players already.
Right. You could be 10-2 if injuries go the right way. Just like I said, with like you can't control those things. Like you could be 10-2, and we get some injuries. We could be 6-6. Like I think
health plays a big play. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like with some of these things, unfortunately, you don't have the control. Like we get a dream run, we could go really well. We could be a playoff team. We get a tough run, everyone's going to be like, man, 6-6 with this team. It's like, well, yeah, there's some circumstances.
Well, you know this, right? Kentucky has a ton of depth, more than we've ever had.
Yeah,
for sure.
But there is 4 or 5 guys that if they go down, we don't have another Barian Brown that's sitting back there. We don't have another Deion Walker that's waiting to come in, right?
Exactly.
Or Maxwell Harris. Those are the guys that if they go down or miss a prolonged period of time can really hamper your season because they don't have that. We don't have those. We don't have 4 of those guys. Now, Stoops has done a great job. I think we've brought in between last class and this one 3 of the top 150 defensive line guys, which is they see what that takes in the playoff era. Obviously, I think you guys would have made the playoffs in 18.
Yep.
With this schedule, 3 losses can definitely get you into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Do you think that changes the mindset of a team, or because now you hit a certain spot where you lose, you're like, all right, we can't win the SEC, we can't go to the national, we're not doing anything. Do you think that changes the mentality of how teams will see a season now? Like Kentucky goes out, plays Georgia. Let's just throw this out. Let's say it's a 1-score game. Do you go, hey, we just played the best team in the country and lost by 1. We can do this and get into the playoffs and improve and get these guys maybe later in the year?
The correct answer is that it shouldn't, but it will. Mm-hmm. Like I always said this to the guys when I was playing, like there's no game that's bigger or smaller than anyone else. If we're playing UT Martin, that's just as big, and you should prepare the same way as if you're playing against Georgia, because you've got to prepare at an elite level all the time. Like you should be preparing like you're playing the national championship game every single week. And that should be the mentality. So you shouldn't have those dips and ebbs and flows. The reality is when guys are 18 to 21 that unfortunately you are, because you see the media hype when you're coming up to the big games, and then you see the drop-off when you're playing a terrible team. Mm-hmm. But
like Louisville.
Yeah, literally. So it shouldn't, but it is going to make a difference this year for sure. Like you go back to 2018, when we lost to Georgia for the East and we played Tennessee the next week, if we're playing for a playoff spot, we win that game. Mm-hmm. it was a letdown. What are we playing for?
What was the most emotional? I mean, that was one of the most emotional games. As a fan, I remember seeing tears when my old Kentucky home played because nobody ever thought we'd go and play for a game like that, right? And I'm sure you guys felt that emotion, and there was, and then it is the letdown, right? The next Tennessee sucked.
Right, and unfortunately against Georgia, our punter went out there, and then Miko Hardman returned it for 80 yards. So basically the first play of the game. So he let us down a little bit there, but no, I mean, benched him. Yeah, exactly. So there shouldn't be those letdowns, or there shouldn't have been in the past. There won't be now. But then at the same time, like, you're also playing other teams that have more invested too. So I think it's still a level playing field. I don't think it's going to help or hinder anyone more than it would have in the past. I just think more guys are going to be invested of, like, we could be a playoff team.
I agree with that. I think it's good. So your official prediction is?
I'll say 9-3. Okay. I think I'm going to stay positive, and I called 7-5 2 years ago, and everyone hated me for it, but we were 7-5. So I think 9-3. Hopefully, I can keep the run of me being right.
I don't know if you know this or not, but and this is where some people, when you're talking about coaches and the culture and all this stuff, Kentucky, since Stoops has been here, has had 7+ win seasons. We had 6 from 1985 to 2011. And so there is that appreciation of I think the culture and things that he's built. In that 9-3, where do you think the 3 are?
Probably just the easy ones. I mean, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas. I mean, we may drop another one, beat Texas or beat Ole Miss, but to me that's the easiest answer. But I'll just say on that as well, though, like, as a fan base, as a player, I don't see the problem in wanting more, like, all the time.
Agree.
And I know lots of people, like, there's guys on the radio and the coaches sometimes go, hey, appreciate what you've got. I mean, sure, but just keep pushing for more too.
Iron sharpens iron.
Right. They should be wanting more. Now, should they lose their mind if we go 7-5? No. I mean,
it's also how you go 7-5, right? Like, there's this schedule, and I even pointed this out. There is a world where you can go 7-5 and you're disappointed, but in the right way, because what if you lose 4 of these games to a top 15 team by 7 points, and they're, the ball just didn't go your way.
Right. And also
that's possible, and you could still be a really damn good football team still.
Yeah, and continually, like you said, off the field, like in life, but in sports too, like, continually look for improvement. Like, let's take this season and see how we go and how can we get better. And the fan base should want us to try to get better all the time. So to me, it's like, should we be happy with the seasons that we've been having? Sure. But we should also want more all the time and be looking to improve, because the way that we've been able to retain talent, why can't we be a 10-2, 11-1, 12-0 team if we just stack and stack and stack and stack and stack over time?
And the margins with Kentucky are a little bit finer, right? I mean, you've played against some of these big-time teams, and you see, like, there's just one thoroughbred goes down, there's another thoroughbred right behind it, right? The margins are small, and Kentucky could have easily won 9 or 10 games the last 2 years, and we didn't. But you've got the talent to do it. So, Max, we appreciate you coming on and chatting kind of all the spectrum all over the place. It's been fun. Good luck on the pregame show.
Appreciate it.
Hopefully you get to tailgate a little bit at some point.
Come stop by ours.
I doubt it, but I'll try and stop by if I can, and then take my LCA Eagles to a world championship.
There you go.
Sounds good, man. Thanks to everybody for listening. Go Big Blue.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Bleed Blue Network podcast. We hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of Kentucky sports with us. Don't forget to stay connected by following us on Twitter at BleedBNation. Your feedback means the world to us. So take a moment to leave a review. Not only does it help us improve, but it also helps others discover the show. Until next time, keep cheering, keep listening, and keep bleeding blue.